How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. With me, as usual, is Leonard. My name is Chad. This is a show about wrestling, and today we're doing one of our rebooks where we take an event that is widely considered to be bad and we rebook it to make it a little bit better. And we give ourselves some rules to follow. We usually try to follow the roster as it was in that company at that time. In the past, we've used free agents if there are free agents at the time and we know who they are. Um, but in this case, there were also some gimmick matches in the case of this event, so we'll get to those rules in a bit.
Okay.
But the event we're covering today is WCW's New Blood Rising, and it took place August 13th, 2000, from the Pacific Coliseum in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And, Leonard, I was going to try to change the name of this event to go along with my rebook, but I was like, oh, what was the, name of the pay-per-view that was in the place usually? Road Wild,
Road Wild.
which is also a name I think is terrible. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about the name in this case.
Yeah.
It is
Well,
what
and it should be mentioned that the New Blood didn't exist by this point.
right. Right.
So the storyline from when Vince Russo came in was the New Blood versus the Millionaires Club,
Right.
and at the July pay-per-view Bash at the Beach was when Russo cut that promo on Hulk Hogan, and Hogan and Bischoff left the company, and that pretty much dissolved that storyline and those stables. So you have a show named after a stable that doesn't exist.
Right. And they did marketing and stuff so, ahead of schedule that this is what you're stuck with. So this attendance for this event was 6,614. And let's go over the actual card as it was. This pay-per-view, in my opinion, is pretty much remembered for one match, and that would be the first one, which is 3 Count versus the Young Dragons in a gold record ladder match. 11 minutes 32 seconds. 3 Count won that.
It is certainly the best match on the show, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. The second match, Ernest Miller defeating the Great Muta, 6 minutes 47. Next match after that, Buff Bagwell defeating Chris Kanyon in a Judy Bagwell on a forklift match, 6 minutes and 45 seconds. So our card has to have a something on a pole match.
Yeah, I didn't say forklift, just something on a pole.
Right. The match after that, Chronic defeated the Perfect Event, Sean O'Hare and Mark Jindrak, and the Misfits in Action in a Four Corners match for the WCW World Tag Team titles. Filthy Animals were special guest referees, 12 minutes, 22 seconds. After that was a strap match, Billy Kidman defeating Shane Douglas in 8 minutes and 22 seconds. Following that was a mud rip off the clothes match, Major Guns against Miss Hancock. Major Guns won that, 6 minutes and 43 seconds. After that, Sting defeated the Demon in 52 seconds. After that, Lance Storm defeated Mike Awesome in a Canadian rules match for the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. Jacques Rougeau was a special guest enforcer, 11 minutes, 28 seconds. The Dark Carnival, Vampiro and the Great Muta defeated Chronic for the WCW World Tag Team Championships, 9 minutes and 6 seconds. Kevin Nash defeated Goldberg and Scott Steiner in a three-way, 10 minutes and 48 seconds. And the main event, Booker T defeated Jeff Jarrett for the World Heavyweight Championship in 14 minutes and 54 seconds. This was not a good pay-per-view. I think that you could just look at the rundown of that card and you know just a little bit about WCW at that time. You know that the card wasn't very good. So, Leonard, your thoughts on this pay-per-view, if you have any other than what I said?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, to mention, not only did we have to include something on a pole match, but a ladder match of some sort as well, because there was a ladder match. We didn't go too far down the Russo gimmick hole too much. But, when people talk about Russo booking, this is what they're talking about. There's no better example than this. It's a swerve, bro. It's a shoot, bro, but it's not. The rules don't matter, bro. The matches don't matter, bro. You've got all these different gimmicks. You got something on a pole, something at the top of a ladder. You've got two half-naked women wrestling in mud. just all the cliches and tropes that get leveled against him. And you know, there's all the little things we didn't mention. David Arquette has a run out during the Judy Bagwell on a forklift match.
Yep.
The triple threat involving Nash and Goldberg had them acting like it was a shoot that really exposing the business, that Goldberg was going off script, and now they have to improvise and all this. So there and you know, the biggest thing, the travesty one may say, is in the mud wrestling match. You had Stacy Keibler having a miscarriage of a birth she wasn't even going to have. She wasn't even pregnant. That was just the storyline.
Right.
It should be mentioned that Russo did the exact same thing in WWF with Terry Reynolds.
He did, yeah.
So,
and you know, I'm sure you kept a work shoot in your card, I'm sure, right, Leonard?
I did not keep a work. You know what? I could. There's a match that I could easily make a work shoot, I think.
We don't want to make yours bad again.
No, but I could probably do it. So before I throw it back to you, I will say this show was kind of hard for me to rebook until I started getting into it. And one thing I found really interesting as I was looking at it is that, one, the roster is super bloated. You have so many names. I could probably book another show with the guys I didn't use. But the low to mid card is a bunch of good young guys, but they're still green and they don't have name value. And then your upper to main event guys are veterans, have great name value, but they're either past their prime or they just don't care. Trying to keep a New Blood Rising idea, not every match, but a lot of the matches, I kind of book the older guys versus the younger guys with the idea that we're trying to get the younger guys over.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, so much has been said, written, video recorded, documented about WCW during this period. Like Leonard mentioned, there was some really good young up-and-coming talent, but then there was veterans that didn't care about anything but picking up a paycheck. Mm-hmm. And then there were people that also were veterans that just couldn't do it anymore, clearly. But as bloated as this roster is, knowing how good or not some of these people were at this time, it really made it difficult to try and make chicken salad out of chicken shit in this case. Yeah. So once I found a kind of a theme to go with, I kind of just followed that and, you know, be damned at the consequences, and we'll get there. But I have, including a dark match, 12 matches.
Wow, I only have 8.
Okay, so I'll go over like 3 of mine first.
Yeah,
and then
I you know what? I figured less was more. I think the original show had something like 11 or 12. We'd have to
I don't
spread them off. But,
I don't know why I wanted to go with the exact number of matches or close to it anyway that they had.
Yeah, I went originally. I had 7, and I was like, I should add one more, and because I still had so many guys left, so I wound up going back and adding one.
All right, so like I said, I wanted to change the name of the pay-per-view. I didn't, because it just was an awkward pay-per-view name, no matter where you go. But I have one dark match. And it's because I wanted to include the ladies somehow, and this will show you my theme right away. And the match I have is Daphne versus Medusa, and the reason I have that match is because it didn't happen. And that was the theme of my card, my rebook, which is matches that either didn't happen or hadn't happened yet. So that is
okay. I like that.
So Daphne wasn't quite as good wrestling wise at this stage of her career as she would become, but if anybody watched the Dark Side of the Ring on her, it is, you know, quite heartbreaking. And you know, she was a good talent, certainly known for her screaming. At this point, that's what they used her for a lot. But anyway, Daphne versus Medusa for a dark match. Who knows if it would have been any good, but it would have been cool to see the two of them, a younger person and a veteran, go head to head.
If you wanted women, those would be the 2 best ones to pick out, considering like every Nitro girl was being used. Because that was the thing with Russo. Like he used all the women, but not in good ways.
Exactly.
So, but if you wanted, like, this is probably your best opportunity. Like you said, Daphne was not as good as she would become, but with a veteran like Medusa, to walk her through it, I think this would have been serviceable for a dark match.
Yeah. So the opening match on my card, it should be noted that the day after this pay-per-view, Lance Storm gave away 2 out of the 3 titles that he held.
Yes.
The Cruiserweight and the Hardcore, maybe. I forget.
Yeah, so I believe the Hardcore went to Pierre Carl Ouellette, later PCO, and Elix Skipper got the Cruiserweight title, or what they were calling the 100-kilogram title.
Yeah. I looked that up and I was like, that's not real. It is. So I just made this one for the WCW United States Championship. Lance Storm versus Billy Kidman.
Okay.
I forget if this is a match that would have happened eventually or not, but at this point, these guys really didn't have anything against each other that I found anyway. So I thought you have the high-flying ability of Billy Kidman, technical ability of Lance Storm. I think for an opening match, they could have put on a decent enough show.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's a slight bit of contrast, but there's also a slight bit of similarities because, I mean, Storm was still, a bit bigger than Kidman, but in your cruiserweight ballpark weight-wise. And sometimes Lance could do more of a cruiserweight stuff. Sometimes Kidman could do some more technical stuff. So I think they would find a way to kind of meet in the middle. And we always talk about an opener that wants to wake up the crowd. And I think that those 2 guys could do that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. The next match is the only match that I really didn't know what to do with these teams. And I just kind of had to put them together. Because the original match between 3 Count and Young Dragons was very good. And I didn't want to keep it the same. So I have 3 Count of Helms and Moore versus the Young Dragons of Jamie Sun and Yun Yang versus the Perfect Event versus Sean O'Haire and Mark Jindrak in a 4 corners #1 contenders match. So you have some high-flying guys. You have some of the guys that WCW really valued at the time that eventually sank in WWE. But you have kind of all of them together. And I would have given the #1 contender spot to probably 3 Count here as just kind of like an underdog story.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Jamie San is Jamie Noble.
Yes,
and Yin Yang is Jimmy Wang Yang.
Right.
And yeah, when I think of New Blood, I think of Jindrak and O'Haire and Palumbo and those guys. So I didn't use all of them. I did want to use some of them. So I think that's if you go, well, I want to use this stable and I want to use these guys, maybe doing a foray like this is the best way. And like you said, you have power versus speed, so you can do a bunch of big man, little man stuff in different combinations.
Right. So Leonard, it is off to your first match.
My first match is for the WCW Cruiserweight title. Is a 6-way ladder match. Elix Skipper versus Jamie San versus Evan Kariagas versus Billy Kidman versus Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Lieutenant Loco or Chavo Guerrero Jr. So there were a bunch of stables. So I pretty much gave each stable a guy to be in this. And as we talked about, Skipper wouldn't get the Cruiserweight belt to the next night on Nitro. But, having all those 3 belts on one dude, I wanted to break him out. So maybe Team Canada forms the week before. Maybe Storm is forced to vacate the belt or decides to vacate the belt. And he says, hey, whoever wins this belt, you will prove to me that you are worthy of honorary Canadian citizenship, and I'll take you on, something like that. And with that being said, you would have Skipper win. And Skipper is probably the guy here that would most need the win, and maybe the least known or least over of these guys at the time. If it's not Skipper, I would go to Ray. You put the belt on Ray at any point. But that was the idea. It doesn't really matter how you work it, but the fact that they're in Canada too. So if Skipper wins and he joins with Storm at this point, and that's definitely going to be something that's going to get him over more than he was.
Yeah, I didn't really get a chance to use Elix Skipper, but I like the idea of having the ladder match for the Cruiserweight title. Certainly having a ladder match with a bunch of different guys in it would become a WWE staple down the road. Certainly well within reality for that to have happened at WCW. Like I said, I had thought about using the cruiserweight title, but I was like, I had a couple instances where I don't want to there's no instance where I cheat maybe, but like a little bit. So we'll get there. So I didn't want to do too much of that. But anywho, I like your idea of a match for sure. My next match is very much contrast in styles. But again, these two guys never faced each other, and that is DDP versus Juventud Guerrera.
I don't know why that makes me laugh.
Right.
Picturing those two guys together.
It's weird, right? It is weird, and I will be the first to say I don't know if the match would be good, but I think both these guys at this point were still really going for it in their careers. I think they really still had something to prove to a certain degree being in WCW. So I think it would have just been cool to see the two of them in the ring. What would the storyline have been? I have no idea. At this point, DDP was, he would eventually, maybe he already was with Nash and the Insiders. He did all sorts of different stuff. But I think you could have created a storyline, or you could have just made it a competitive match. The two of them wanting to see what the other one had, something like that.
Sure. I could see this being Hoovy just bouncing off of Paige, and Paige being overwhelmed. Like, I didn't expect I was going to get this, but then hitting a diamond cutter out of nowhere as the finish.
Yeah. All right.
So my next match is something that I don't know if you booked. I wouldn't be surprised if you did, but this match maybe did happen in Japan. I'm not a big Japan dude. But I've got Kaz Hayashi versus the Great Muta.
Okay.
I thought this was easy booking here. You have two Japanese legends. One guy who was so very early in his career, Hayashi, had only turned pro, I think, in 92 or 93. Muta was, you could kind of say, was in the middle of his career, but he would wrestle some years after that, certainly a veteran. And one thing I found out when I was doing some research is that Vince Russo hated Japanese wrestlers. He never thought a Japanese wrestler could get over in America. And did not like them. And if you looked at Muta during this run, he was so misused. Yeah. And that was probably the reason. But I say just let these guys go in and do their stuff. And again, I want to try to put over the younger guys. So I would probably have Hayashi win this.
I like the idea of using Muta. I used him as well in a different way, though. In terms of getting people over from Japan or getting people over where English is not their first language, it's doable. You just have to find the right recipe. And a lot of companies have trouble with it. And I think that if you look in the past and currently, you can see people that are over in the U.S. Where that is the case. But I think that sounds like a good match, a combination of the young and the veteran. And I think it would have been good, for sure. So my next match is, what I came to discover, or at least it said on the internet, is a fantasy favorite to a certain degree. But again, these two guys have never faced each other, and that is Mike Awesome versus Goldberg.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Right. So I was trying to think of how to use Goldberg. He's there. Got to find some way to use him. So I was like, let's put him in the ring with somebody who is also big, but we know that this guy will put his body on the line to have a good match. So I think it would have been cool to see what this would have looked like. Would it have looked like, in reality, it probably would have looked like a normal Goldberg match. But could it have gone a different way? Like, could we have seen a different side of Goldberg? Maybe something a little bit more hardcore or whatever. He could have done something with both of these guys that I think would have been interesting in the right hands.
Yes, I think Awesome, you could have went maybe 10 minutes. It's not a 5-minute Goldberg squash. I think you could have got more out of this. I wish I came up with that. That's a great idea. I'd love that combination. So next up, I have the WCW US title, or Canadian title, as Lance Storm was calling at the time. I have Lance Storm. This is a flag match. So Lance Storm, his flag bearer is going to be Jacques Rougeau. versus Lex Luger, and his flag bearer is going to be Jim Duggan.
Is this your pole match?
This is no. It's a flag. I have a pole match later on.
Okay.
But a flag match could be a pole match. I didn't even think about that. So maybe I have 2 pole matches. There you go. That's Russo-rific.
It just now occurred to me that like flag matches are never really in the same category as pole matches. I don't know why it occurred to me that, but anyway.
It is a flag. The flag is usually on a pole that you have to retrieve. So with the Super Canadian gimmick that Storm was doing, I was like, well, he has to have a Patriot to go against him. And so I was like, well, Luger can go back to Lex Express Luger. He can kind of dig the red, white, and blue trunks out of the mothballs and be the guy who goes against Storm. Now, the fact that they're in Canada, I would probably let Storm win through cheating, and then Luger can win the belt on Nitro the next night or down the road, something like that. I also thought about doing Jacques Rougeau versus Jim Duggan as a dark match just for fun. But I did not do that. But I like the idea of both these old guys being at the ringside and, the dynamic that they could bring being on the outside of the ring.
No, I like it. I mean, Lex Luger was such a, it's just kind of all about his entrance and his posing and he was so jacked at this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, you could use Lance Storm at this time was still doing good stuff. So you could put him against just about anybody, and it would be halfway decent. So I think that is certainly serviceable. My next match is where I cheat a little bit.
Okay.
And it is a career-ending match. Rey Mysterio versus Bret Hart. So these two never faced each other. Bret had already gotten the kick to the head from Goldberg. But here's where it's somewhat cheating and somewhat not. He was still making appearances. And
yes, he was.
There was a couple times where he got physical in the ring. He did not have any matches, as we know. But in a perfect world, it would have been cool to see him go against somebody like Rey Mysterio, somebody that I'm sure he respected. He never got a chance to be in the ring with, as I said. And I don't think that this would have put his body at risk any more than it already was to be in with somebody like Rey. So that's why I booked this. Bret Hart was there. He was injured, but I think if you're going to give him a send-off of some sort, he deserved something better than a kick to the head, and that was it. So,
well, Rey could do all the bumping.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
So I think you could make that work. In a perfect world of fantasy booking, to have them both in their prime would probably have been a really good match. Yeah. Again, like I was kind of saying earlier with another bout, that it's a contrast of styles, but a good contrast of styles that they could work together. So definitely I think they could have figured out something, I think, the two of them. So my next match, this is the 8th match I added. This is the one that I went back and said, hey, I should probably use these guys or at least add another match. And it's Chris Kanyon versus Scott Steiner. And the reason I'm doing that is because Scott Steiner, a lot of people forget because of the Big Papa Pump era, was very innovative at one time, was a very innovative wrestler just 3 to 4 years before this. And Chris Kanyon is a very underrated, innovative wrestler. We had a while back where we watched some dark matches of him in WWE as Mortis, and just the stuff he was doing was just, crazy. So this is the question mark match for me. I don't know if this one would be good or not. It depends on if Kanyon can kind of get Scott to get the juices flowing and bring the Steiner of a couple years before out.
Right.
If not, then this is probably going to be a Steiner, beat down where he's standing in the middle of the ring throwing clotheslines. But if these guys could get on the same page, this could be a kind of a hidden gem, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Anytime if you're using Scott Steiner for anything, it's a matter of how will he look, and as I sit here and look at my card, I am now realizing that I did not use him at all.
Oh, okay.
I thought about it. I thought about reforming the Steiners. That would happen eventually in WCW. They would become heel tag team. But
everything would happen eventually.
Exactly. I didn't want to jump to that. So, but yeah. So my next match is for the WCW World Tag Team Championships. Chronic versus, and here's my other thing where I kind of created something out of thin air. Had to find a way to use Sid Vicious. So Sid Vicious comes out and he says he's reforming the Skyscrapers, but he's going to use Kevin Nash. So it's Chronic versus the Skyscrapers of Sid Vicious and Kevin Nash. Both of them were there. And, you know,
Kevin Nash was a master. He was in the Master Blasters, right? Was that the tag team he was in? So they could be the Master Scrapers or the Sky Blasters.
The Sky Blasters is a great name, and it sounds so awful, but I love it even still. So this is my idea. Would this match be good? No, it wouldn't. Anything against Chronic is not going to be very good. It's just not. No. So that's why I was like, what do I do? Well, have him come out and create something from the past. You have two huge guys going against two other huge guys, and make this match 5-6 minutes and call it a day.
Right. And we talked about how Sid was always over, no matter where he went. So I think the idea of Nash coming out and joining forces with him would get a pop. I think this would at least, and Chronic was over at this point, even though they weren't great, they were over. So I think this is a match, if you do keep it short, that would keep the crowd engaged for the period based on who was in it. So I like that. Now, my next match is also for the WCW Tag Team titles. Chronic, the champions of Brian Adams and Brian Clark, versus the perfect event of I gotta check my notes. Remember who they were? That was Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo. Because Jindrak and O'Hare, I always get mixed up too with those guys. But these were two teams that were part of that four-way that was part of the original show. These guys were feuding at the time, would trade the belts on and off. And again, the idea of wanting to use some of the new blood people. That's why I thought to just make this perfect event. Again, I would keep this short. I would probably have Jindrak or O'Hare or Mike Sanders come out and interfere so that perfect event could win the belts. And then, of course, that would set up a rematch for later on down the road. But yeah, this was just originally my idea was I was going to reform the Jersey Triad. And so I was going to have Bigelow and DDP and Canyon versus Chronic and Mike Awesome. That was my original idea. And then I decided I wanted the tag belts defended, and I did this.
Yeah, I forget what tag team I looked up with Bam Bam Bigelow. There was a tag team that he had in ECW, like not too awful long before this. And I had thought about reforming them as well, but I didn't end up doing that. But I think that, if it's not a four corners match or something, just doing a simple tag, I think would be fine. And as you said, these teams faced each other a bit. So my next match is my pole match, Leonard.
Okay.
It is a weapons on a pole match, Sting versus Terry Funk.
Oh, Sting and Terry Funk never got together? Well, no, tag match.
Yes, that is correct. They wrestled each other in tag matches, but as far as I could tell, never in a one-on-one scenario. So that's why I put this here. I think that you give these guys weapons, just let them go nuts. It's going to be fun. It's two legends. End of story.
I would love this match. Even straight up, it would be great. But the fact that you're adding the weapons on a pole match and the way that Funk could use weapons at this point, being his ECW work and the way he could sell, I love it. I think that's a really cool idea. I like that. And my official pole match is what I've got next as well. It's a taser on a pole match between Kevin Nash and Bill Goldberg.
There you go. I like it.
So back, when Nash ended the undefeated streak, it was through the help of Scott Hall with a taser. And looking back, that never got resolved. Like Goldberg never really got his revenge on Kevin Nash ultimately. So, they always kind of circled each other. You could have Goldberg just saying this is still sticking in his craw and Nash making fun of Goldberg. So naturally, Goldberg would win, would get the taser, shock Nash, and, get his revenge for what happened before.
I like it. I think resolving a storyline makes perfect sense and something WCW should have done more often in this era.
Yeah.
So I think that would have been just fine. Moving along, my next match is a number one contenders match for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Rick Steiner versus Lex Luger. I idea here is to push Rick Steiner, who never really got a chance to be pushed. And it's just somebody I like. When we do these rebooks, I like to give people who I think are due, who never got a chance to get to that level, fantasy chances to do so. So would this have been a good match? It would have been a typical WCW match of the era. Let's face it. It would have been pretty, but I would have pushed Rick Steiner here.
Rick and Luger also faced in tag matches. I don't know if they had a singles match, but Rick was one that, especially early on, when he was started out in the UWF, and then when he was first part of the Varsity Club, was very good. And then I think he just got overshadowed by Scott, unfortunately. Yeah. But Rick could really go in the ring. So
I think these guys might have faced each other down the road.
Yeah, but I definitely think giving Rick an opportunity, I like that. So next up, I have a Chad special, which is a loser leaves town match.
All right,
Ric Flair and Arn Anderson versus Shane Douglas and Torrie Wilson. Okay. And the seconds have to go too. If Flair loses, Arn goes with him. Douglas loses, Torrie goes with him. And originally I was going to do something here with Jeff Jarrett and Flair. But then I hit upon the Douglas thing. Earlier in the year, Douglas and Flair would have a match against each other. And it was based on the real life heat. This is one I said could be the work shoot match because Douglas hated Ric Flair for different reasons depending on who you talk to. So, and again, that was another thing that was never resolved. They had one match back in the spring, didn't really go anywhere from there. So this is the conclusion. You basically have Douglas saying, hey, WCW isn't big enough for the two of us. One of us has to go, and I want your flunky to go with you. And that's how that comes about. So Flair and Arn aren't going to leave, WCW. Right. Douglas could go back to ECW, maybe even WWE, could go to Japan. So I would definitely have, even though Douglas would hate it, I would figure out Douglas jobbing and him and Torrie going away.
Well, I like the idea of using a loser leaves town and then capitalizing on a feud where two guys that seemingly didn't like each other in real life. So I like that. My next match is probably my most random, Leonard, and that is Chris Kanyon versus Terry Taylor. So,
oh god, Terry was working backstage at the time, right?
He was, but he was still wrestling in real life. So he was not retired yet. So I thought this is a guy, Chris Kanyon, who has a lot of innovative moves we've mentioned before. You have Terry Taylor, who's old school. Storyline there writes itself. I think that these guys could have had a very serviceable short match leading up to my main event. Again, obviously these two guys have never faced each other. I wanted to use Terry Taylor very badly, and I thought about finding a way to reform the York Foundation. Couldn't do that, obviously, because Alexandra York was not there. But anywho, I didn't go down that road. But anyway, your thoughts?
Well, like I was saying about Kanyon, he was very innovative. He could look with a bunch of different people. Terry was a very solid technical worker. So I think that could be a surprising match as well, even though Terry Taylor is older at this point. As you said, he was still wrestling. And I think we could have got something maybe surprisingly cool out of these guys. So next is my main event, and it is for the WCW World Heavyweight title, Booker T versus Sting. And I wanted a torch passing match. I thought about Booker T and Flair. I thought about bringing Hogan back, but I didn't want to bring Hogan back yet. So I figured Sting would be the guy. And Booker T and Sting, in about, I think, a month or so after this on Nitro, would have a really good main event match on Nitro. And they have wrestled in the past. They had a little bit of a history. There was one match where Sting and Booker T tagged against, I think it was the Road Warriors. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, there's a little bit of a history here, and definitely I would have Booker win and have Sting kind of give him the handshake and raise the arm and pass that torch. Again, the idea of putting over the next generation of guys, and Russo was very high on Booker T.
I like the idea of those two having a match. I think as a main event, it would have probably been a decent one, and I agree with you on the torch passing thing. My main event is not the same thing, but it's along the same lines, and that would be Ric Flair versus Booker T in a ladder match for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. These guys would face each other in WWE. As far as I could tell at this point,
Oh
they
yeah.
would not have a singles match at this point. But they would, once Triple H and Ric Flair were aligned, all that kind of stuff in WWE,
Right.
they would have that feud. But it would have been cool to see what they did here. Flair was not being used properly, as we all know, at this time. So I think it would have been cool to see him do this, something out of his comfort zone. He would get more out of his comfort zone as he got older. But it would have been cool to see this, just a standard one-on-one ladder match for the title. Have Booker T win. Same thing you said. Have Ric Flair raise the hand. A little torch passing moment. Whatever you want to do.
Like I said, I almost did Flair Booker T. Did not think of making that a ladder match. I can definitely picture Flair getting tossed off the ladder while shaking his head no, and then
absolutely got to do that
thrown
spot.
off. I can see that. So I like the idea of not only doing Booker T Flair, but making it a ladder match and both guys doing something they didn't do all the time. So yeah, that's a great main event too.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think both of our cards are very good. Doing any WCW rebook, like I said, in this era is not easy because even though there's so much talent there, it's like, how do you use them? And then you have to come to the realization, like, man, a lot of these people just weren't good, or at this time they weren't trying. So it's like, what do I do to try and make it better? Right. So I tried to just kind of stick with the theme I did, and Leonard always puts together good matches as well. So
yeah, thanks. And again, with everything being Russo-rific, you kind of just have to throw everything out and not think about storylines and just go, what's the best I can put together here?
Absolutely. So let us know what you thought of our rebooks, of our cards. Comment however you wish. If you have memories of New Blood Rising, the actual pay-per-view, please share them. Check out our other episodes, Segment Surgery, Random Match Reviews, Stupid Questions. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. For Leonard, my name is Chad. Thank you for listening. Hit the like button, subscribe, and we will see you next week.